The sky burned with an orange hue that no sunrise had carried for centuries. Dust hung like a curtain over the shattered cities, and the ruins of old towers jutted into the horizon like broken teeth. Humanity had survived the collapse, but survival had left them hollow, scattered, fearful. In the great plains of what was once the central continent, whispers of the old stories persisted. Tales of beings larger than mountains, machines older than the oldest city, and power humanity had once commanded but had forgotten. Elara stood atop the ridge, wind tugging at the edges of her coat, eyes fixed on the horizon where the earth seemed to shiver beneath the weight of some unseen force. Her heart thumped with a rhythm older than her memory, an instinct she could not name. She was young, barely 27, yet she carried the air of someone who had seen too much and hoped for far too little. Around her, the small settlement of Calden stirred, people unaware that today would be remembered for generations. The first tremor was subtle, like a low hum rising from the bones of the planet itself. Then it grew, shaking the ridges, rattling the stone beneath her boots until the wind itself seemed to scream. Elara felt the resonance in her chest, a vibration that touched something primal, something deep within the human spirit. Birds scattered, the sky a swirl of dust and light, and for a moment the world seemed suspended. "They're waking," a voice murmured behind her. It was Kael, tall and lean, with eyes that never quite smiled but always observed. He had grown up on stories of the Titans, and even now he clung to them like lifelines. The old machines. The ones we were told were myths. "They're stirring." Elara's lips parted, disbelief and hope warring in her chest. "It's impossible," she whispered. But even as she said it, the ground before them cracked, a line widening, glowing faintly with an energy that had not touched human hands in centuries. The tremor became a pulse, rhythmic and commanding, almost alive. From the crack, a shape began to emerge. First, it was only a shadow, colossal and unmoving. But as dust and time fell away, a form of metal and stone, sculpted in the likeness of something both human and divine, rose into the dim light. The Titans had returned. Their surfaces bore the scars of forgotten wars. Their joints hummed with dormant power, and their eyes, though still dark, seemed to peer into the depths of the human soul. Elara felt her knees weaken. Around her, the settlement had gathered, faces pale, mouths open, eyes wide with awe and fear. The older villagers whispered prayers they hadn't said in decades, while children stared as if seeing the stars descend to touch the earth. Kael reached for her hand. "We were meant to remember," he said, voice trembling. "Not just our stories. Ourselves. They're here because we need to rise." A low rumble filled the air, vibrating through stone and flesh alike, and then with a sound like the cracking of the world's spine, the Titan moved. One massive foot lifted, dust and debris cascading as if the earth itself bowed to its awakening. It was not hostile, at least not yet, but it carried the weight of eons, a reminder of a humanity that had once been great, capable of shaping the stars themselves. Elara's heart soared, tears streaming unbidden. She realized in that instant the truth of Kael's words. The Titans were not just machines. They were mirrors reflecting what humanity had forgotten. Courage, ingenuity, resilience, and the audacity to dream beyond survival. For a long moment, the humans of Calden simply watched, frozen between fear and hope. Then Elara took a step forward, feeling the pulse of the Titan in her chest, the rhythm of ancient purpose. Humanity had been waiting, unaware, for this moment. And now, the world trembled not just beneath the Titan's weight, but beneath the awakening of the human spirit. The first day of the new era had begun, and with it the forgotten legacy of the Titans whispered a promise. Humanity could rise again, and this time it would remember what it was meant to be. The sun had dipped behind the jagged ruins, casting long shadows over Calden. The Titan remained colossal and silent, a monolith against the dying light. Its presence was both awe-inspiring and terrifying, a reminder of a time when humans walked with giants as allies, shaping the world with hands that no longer reached the stars. Elara and Kael moved cautiously toward the Titan, the settlement watching from a distance, whispers carrying on the wind. Every step toward it felt heavy with history, each breath a prayer to the forgotten architects of humanity's past. The ground beneath them hummed, a subtle vibration that pulsed through their feet, reminding them that this was no mere relic. It was alive, or at least, it held a life they could not yet understand. Kael reached out, resting his palm against the Titan's immense leg. The metal was cold but thrummed with an inner warmth, an energy that seemed to respond to human touch. "It remembers," he said, his voice barely audible over the wind. "It remembers us." Elara swallowed, uncertainty and fear knotting in her chest. "What if it doesn't like what it sees?" she whispered. "What if it—" "You are thinking like a survivor, not a human," Kael interrupted gently. "This is not just about survival anymore." Look into its eyes, she did, and in that moment, the darkness of the Titan's gaze seemed to peel away centuries of doubt, stripping her bare to a core she had long buried. In those eyes she saw echoes of humanity's first courage, the boldness that had once built cities that touched the clouds, machines that bent the heavens, and minds that sought to understand the universe. She felt her pulse quicken, a rhythm matching the Titan's own, a connection older than memory itself. Then came the first sign of warning. A tremor, sharper this time, rattled the settlement. Dust fell from the ruins, and in the distance another Titan stirred, smaller but no less imposing. Unlike the first, this one moved with a strange urgency, almost impatient, as if it had waited for centuries to fulfill a purpose it could no longer delay. The villagers panicked, fleeing toward their homes or hiding behind crumbling walls. But Elara and Kael stood their ground. Something deep within them refused to flee from what they could barely comprehend. "They're responding to us," Kael murmured. "They sense the living, the creators, and not all of them are patient." Elara's hands clenched, the weight of responsibility pressing down on her. Humanity had been humbled by collapse, reduced to survival. Yet here, in the presence of these Titans, she felt the stirrings of something long lost: pride, daring, and a fragile hope. The Titans were not just machines. They were a test, a mirror, and perhaps the key to reclaiming what had been lost. Night fell fully, the first Titan's eyes glowing faintly, casting pools of soft light across the ruins. Kael turned to the settlement, calling out, "We cannot cower. We must understand them, not fear them." A few brave souls emerged, hesitant, drawn by curiosity stronger than fear. Among them was Lys, an elder whose memory stretched back before the collapse, whose stories of the Golden Age had often been dismissed as dreams. He approached slowly, leaning on a cane, his eyes reflecting the Titan's glow. "You feel it too," Lys said, voice trembling yet resolute. "The power, the promise. Our ancestors left more than ruins. They left a path, and we have forgotten to walk it." Elara nodded, the fire of purpose igniting within her chest. Fear lingered, yes, but beneath it surged a recognition that humanity had endured worse and had survived. The Titans were not a threat, they were a call. And for the first time in generations, she believed they could answer it. The wind shifted, carrying a faint hum through the valley, the sound almost musical, like a chorus of whispers from the past. The Titan's awakening was not violent. It was deliberate, a cadence meant to awaken humanity as much as the machines themselves. And in that rhythm, Elara felt her own heartbeat synchronize, the ancient echo of power resonating in her veins. "This is only the beginning," Kael said softly, eyes fixed on the second Titan, now fully upright, its presence dominating the horizon. "We will learn, we will rise, or we will fall again, but we will remember. That is what matters." Above them, the stars began to pierce the night sky, silent witnesses to the rebirth of a species that had forgotten its own strength. Humanity's story was no longer one of mere survival. It was about awakening, and the Titans had given them the chance to reclaim their destiny. And somewhere in the shadow of the mountains, the wind carried the faint sound of metal shifting, gears turning and hearts daring to hope again. Dawn crept over Calden like a cautious whisper, brushing the ruins with pale light. The two Titans stood motionless against the skyline, guardians of a forgotten age, their sheer presence bending the atmosphere into reverence. Humanity, long, humbled by collapse, felt both small and infinite in their shadows. Elara awoke before the sun had fully risen. Sleep had not come easily. The image of the Titans haunted her dreams, colossal forms that seemed almost alive, their silent eyes probing the depths of her soul. She could still feel the pulse of the first one in her chest, a rhythm that resonated with her own heartbeat. Kael sat beside her, staring at the horizon with that same quiet intensity. "They're waiting," he said, voice low. "Not for us to act, but for us to choose." Elara nodded, though uncertainty gnawed at her. The Titan's awakening was a marvel, yes, but marvels demanded courage, and courage demanded action. If humanity could not rise to meet this moment, the opportunity would vanish as quickly as it had appeared. The villagers gathered in the valley, hesitant but drawn forward by curiosity stronger than fear. Lys, the elder, stepped to the front, leaning heavily on his cane, yet moving with purpose. "The Titans do not awaken for spectators," he said, voice carrying over the wind. "They awaken for participants. We must step forward, not as the weak survivors of the collapse, but as humans remembering our strength." Elara took a deep breath. She felt the pulse again, subtle but undeniable. She stepped toward the first Titan, each movement deliberate, reverent. Its massive hand hovered above the ground, almost as if inviting contact. The metal was cool, but not lifeless. Beneath it thrummed the memory of a civilization long gone. Kael followed her, hands brushing against the Titan's leg. Around them, the villagers hesitated, some retreating, others frozen in awe. The air was heavy with anticipation, every heart pounding in sync with the faint rhythm from the machines. Suddenly the ground trembled. The smaller Titan, the one that had stirred with urgency the night before, stepped forward. It did not approach violently, but each footfall sent shockwaves through the earth. Rocks tumbled from the cliffs, dust billowed, and the villagers' fear flared. Elara stood firm. "It's testing us," she whispered to Kael. "We must not falter." Kael nodded. "Then we show it who we are." Elara raised her hands, palms open, an instinctive gesture of surrender and trust. The Titan stopped. Its eyes glowed faintly like the dawn itself, and for a heartbeat the world fell silent. It was as if the machine was reading, weighing, deciding. Humanity's courage, so long buried under survival, radiated from her and Kael, echoing across the valley. Then the Titan extended its arm. Slowly, deliberately, it touched the ground, and a wave of energy pulsed outward. It was not destructive, it was revelatory. The air shimmered and images appeared, visions of humanity's past, soaring cities, machines that bent the sky, minds that reached for the stars, and then, visions of the collapse, the mistakes, the hubris, the fear. The villagers gasped, tears streaming as the memories of their ancestors whispered across time. Elara felt something deep within her shift, a fusion of grief and hope, fear and determination. The Titan had not attacked. It had shown. It had reminded. Kael grasped her hand. "It wants us to remember, but also to choose what we will be next." The first trial was clear. Humanity could not simply stand in awe. They must act, must reclaim their legacy not through might, but through understanding, courage, and unity. The Titans were guides, yes, but guides expected followers who dared to rise. As the light strengthened, the two Titans moved in tandem, almost choreographed, testing the villagers' resolve. Some stumbled, faltered, shrinking away. Others stepped forward, hearts pounding, eyes wide, reaching toward the machines with trembling hands. Elara and Kael led the way, and slowly the fear began to give way to determination. By midday, a pattern had emerged. The humans who dared to reach out, to trust, were acknowledged by the Titans. A faint hum vibrated in the ground, a resonance that matched their own heartbeats. Every step forward was a victory, a rediscovery of strength that had lain dormant for centuries. And in that valley, beneath the shadow of machines older than memory, Humanity took its first step toward remembering what it truly was. Not fragile, not small, but capable of rising again even from the ashes of collapse. The Titans had awakened, and so had humanity. Night descended like a velvet curtain, soft but heavy, wrapping the valley in shadows. The Titans, now fully upright and standing like silent sentinels, exuded a presence that both inspired and unnerved. Their colossal forms seemed to drink in the moonlight, radiating an energy that made the smallest human feel both infinite and fragile at once. Elara sat atop a crumbled wall, knees drawn to her chest, staring at the glowing eyes of the first Titan. Kael stood nearby, scanning the horizon, but even he could not hide the tension in his shoulders. The valley had quieted after the first trial, but whispers and fears lingered among the villagers like shadows at dusk. "They're incredible," a young boy muttered behind them. "But what if they're not kind?" Elara's gaze softened, resting on the boy. "Kindness isn't the measure here," she said. "They're a reflection. What we feel, what we choose to be, they mirror it. Fear feeds them, courage inspires them." Kael's eyes narrowed. "But even reflection can be dangerous. If we falter, if we doubt ourselves, what happens then?" Elara did not answer immediately. Doubt had been creeping into her own mind, a silent whisper threatening to erode the conviction she had felt during the trial. Humanity had been humbled by centuries of collapse. Could they truly rise to meet the Titans' expectations, or would they crumble under the weight of their own uncertainty? The ground trembled again, subtle at first, then growing, a heartbeat that pulsed through stone and bone alike. From the ridge a third Titan appeared, massive and jagged unlike the first two. Its surface was darker, etched with scars, and its eyes burned with a cold, piercing light. Unlike the others, there was no welcoming aura, only the raw, imposing presence of something ancient and deliberate. The villagers scattered, panic rising like a tide. Lace called out, but fear drowned his voice. Elara gritted her teeth, stepping forward. Kael followed, placing a hand on her shoulder. "We can't let fear rule us," he said. "We've come too far." The third Titan advanced, each step sending cracks across the valley floor. Dust and debris swirled around its feet like smoke from a distant fire. Its gaze scanned the humans with a calculated precision, and every heart seemed to freeze beneath that scrutiny. Elara's mind raced. The first Titans had tested them, shown them the past and their potential. This one felt different. It carried judgment, a challenge. She realized with a chill that the Titans did not only awaken to remind humanity of greatness, they awakened to test it and perhaps to punish failure. Kael whispered, "It's as if it senses doubt. Fear." Elara closed her eyes briefly, breathing in deep, steadying herself. The shadows of doubt that clung to her and the villagers were powerful, but not invincible. She opened her eyes, meeting the cold gaze of the third Titan. "We are not what we were yesterday," she said, voice trembling but unwavering. "We are rising, we will not falter." Slowly, others followed her lead. The villagers, emboldened by Elara's courage, stepped forward, hands raised, hearts pounding. Even Lice moved, leaning heavily on his cane but standing taller than he had in decades. Together, they faced the shadowed Titan, their combined presence radiating resolve. The third Titan paused, an eternity condensed into a single heartbeat. Then, it shifted, lowering its colossal arm toward the humans. Not in attack, but in recognition. A pulse of energy spread outward, and this time, it carried warmth mixed with the sharp edge of caution. A reminder that courage alone was not enough. Humanity must also wield wisdom, unity, and trust in themselves and each other. Elara felt the pulse resonate through her chest, stronger than ever, a rhythm that seemed to intertwine with her heartbeat. The shadows of doubt did not vanish completely, but they thinned, retreating like clouds before dawn. Kael exhaled, voice hoarse. "We survived the first trial," he said. "But this is the true test. Fear will not only come from the unknown, it will come from ourselves." Elara nodded. "Then we face it together. Whatever comes, we stand as one. That is the strength the Titans seek." Above them, the night sky shimmered with stars, and the three Titans loomed like echoes of eternity. Humanity had learned that awe alone was not enough. They must rise, not only in courage but in conviction, for the shadows of doubt were patient, cunning, and relentless, and in that valley, under the gaze of giants, humanity faced the long night ahead, a night filled with trial, fear, and the promise of awakening. The dawn brought a fragile light to Calden, casting long shadows across the valley, stretching toward the Titans like the fingers of a forgotten past. Humanity had survived the night, but the memory of the shadowed Titan lingered like an echo, a reminder that awe and courage alone could not carry them forward. Elara stood at the edge of the valley, eyes fixed on the first Titan. Its massive hand rested against the earth, fingers splayed as if cradling the ground itself. Kael joined her, carrying a small device, a relic of old technology scavenged from the ruins. It hummed faintly, reacting to the presence of the Titans, and Elara could feel a warmth emanating from it, like a heartbeat of knowledge waiting to be unlocked. "This is it," Kael said, his voice tight with excitement. "We've seen what they are. Now we begin to learn what they hold." Elara nodded. "Then we must be ready. We cannot waste what we've been given." Together they approached the first Titan. The ground vibrated subtly, a welcoming pulse that seemed to recognize their intent. Kael placed the device against the Titan's leg, and light coursed through it, spilling into the valley like liquid fire. The Titan shivered, its metal surface rippling as though breathing. A deep hum resonated through the air, and Elara felt the vibration inside her chest as though the heartbeat of the machine had synced with her own. Suddenly the Titan moved. Its massive arm lifted, revealing a panel etched with strange ancient symbols. Kael's eyes widened. This is a console," he whispered, "a bridge between their memory and ours." Elara stepped closer, tracing the glowing symbols with her fingers. Knowledge dormant for centuries flowed through her mind. She saw visions of cities that touched the clouds, engines that harnessed stars, and machines that bent reality itself. Humanity had once been limitless, creators of wonders now only whispered about in legend. But the visions also carried warnings: hubris, greed, and the collapse that had reduced humanity to survival. The Titans had been both guardians and judges, watching over potential, waiting for humans to rise again with wisdom, not arrogance. Kael looked at her, eyes shining. "The fire of the forgotten. It's within us too. We just need to awaken it." Elara's pulse quickened. She realized that this was more than a lesson. It was a call to action. Humanity had been tested by awe, fear, and doubt. Now they were being offered power, knowledge, and a chance to reclaim what had been lost. But with such gifts came responsibility, and mistakes could be devastating. The smaller villagers watched from the edges of the valley, fear slowly giving way to wonder. Lai stepped forward, leaning on his cane, his voice trembling but firm. "We have waited too long. We have survived too long. Now we must learn. We must remember." Elara smiled faintly, feeling the weight of generations pressing on her shoulders. "We rise together," she said. "Each of us, in our own way, holds a piece of what they want us to be." The Titan's eyes flared brighter, and a pulse of energy rippled through the valley. Rocks floated briefly, suspended in the air, and a wind of warmth swept through the settlement. The humans gasped, some collapsing to their knees in awe, others lifting their faces to the sky, hearts ignited with possibility. Elara reached out, touching the Titan's surface once more. The light enveloped her hand, flowing up her arm, and for a brief instant she felt herself connected to something far greater than herself. Knowledge, courage, and purpose intertwined, whispering secrets humanity had long forgotten. She saw blueprints of machines, strategies for rebuilding cities, and visions of humans standing among the stars. Kael joined her, hand over hers. "It's not magic," he said softly. "It's potential. They give us tools, but we must forge the future with our own hands." The energy faded slowly, leaving warmth in its place, a reminder that the fire of the forgotten was not gone. It had merely waited for the right moment to ignite within humanity. Elara looked across the valley at the other villagers, their faces filled with wonder, fear, and growing determination. "This is just the beginning," she said. "The Titans have given us a spark. Now it's up to us to carry it forward, to rise not as survivors but as humans who remember what we were always meant to be." And as the sun rose fully, bathing the valley in golden light, the Titans watched silently, immense and eternal, while humanity took its first true steps toward reclaiming the legacy that had been buried beneath centuries of doubt and survival. The fire of the forgotten had awakened, and with it so had humanity's courage, ingenuity, and hope. The valley was quiet, almost eerily so, as the humans gathered around the Titans. The first light of dawn had long vanished, leaving only the soft glow of the colossal machine's eyes to illuminate the landscape. It was a light that felt alive, warm yet demanding, as if it could peer directly into the soul of anyone who dared stand before it. Elara stepped forward, Kael beside her, and a murmur ran through the villagers. The fire of the forgotten had sparked within them, but that spark carried both hope and burden. Knowledge was powerful, but power without wisdom was perilous. Already Elara sensed the stirrings of doubt, fear, and temptation among the humans. Some saw opportunity, others threat, and in the shadows of the Titans' immense forms, the heart of humanity itself would be tested. A low hum resonated from the first Titan, a rhythm almost like a heartbeat. The second Titan mirrored it, and for a moment the valley seemed suspended in time. Then from the shadows beyond the ridge the third Titan appeared, jagged and dark, its eyes like molten steel. It moved slowly, deliberately, each footfall a reminder that the power they sought came with scrutiny. Elara took a deep breath. "This is more than learning," she whispered to Kael. "It's about proving ourselves, proving that we can be responsible." Kael's eyes narrowed. "Not just responsible," he said softly. "It's about what's in our hearts. The Titans can see that. They can feel fear, greed, doubt, love. They test what we value most." From the gathering, a few villagers stepped forward, emboldened by curiosity or perhaps ambition. One reached for the glowing panel of the first Titan without thought, eager to claim knowledge as if it were a prize. Another attempted to pry the device from Kael's hands. Fear flared in the eyes of the elders, and the valley trembled. The first Titan's gaze shifted toward the intruders. A pulse of energy rippled outward, not violent but heavy with warning. Elara felt the vibration in her chest and realized the truth. The Titans would not simply reward boldness. They required alignment of heart and mind. Greed or selfishness would be met with silence or worse. Elara stepped between the humans and the Titan, raising her hands in a gesture of calm. "We cannot let our desire blind us," she said, voice steady despite the adrenaline surging through her. "We must act with clarity. We are not alone, we are humanity. Our choices reflect all of us." Kael nodded, placing his hand on her shoulder. "This is the trial of the heart," he murmured. "The Titans are testing our unity, our ethics, our courage under pressure. Not just skill, not just intelligence, heart." The intruders hesitated, sensing the gravity in the air. Slowly they stepped back, eyes wide as the first Titan's pulse intensified, bathing the valley in warm light. Elara felt the connection deepen, the Titan's rhythm matching hers and Kael's and then spreading outward, intertwining with the resolve of every human present who acted with honor and courage. Visions appeared, not of cities or machines this time, but of choices, moments from the villagers' lives, moments of kindness, sacrifice, and bravery. Every act of integrity seemed to resonate with the Titans, creating a harmony that lifted the human spirits and strengthened the connection to the ancient machines. Elara's chest swelled with emotion. "This is why they awakened," she said softly. "Not to see what we can destroy, but to see what we can protect. What we can choose to value. Our hearts determine the future." The third Titan, jagged and cold, stepped closer but did not strike. Instead, its eyes softened slightly. acknowledging the humans' collective courage and clarity. The valley quivered one last time, a final test of alignment and unity. When the tremor subsided, the humans realized something extraordinary. Their fear had been tempered, their doubts tested, and their hearts proven capable of choosing wisely even under immense pressure. The Titans were not merely machines of power. They were mirrors, reflecting the best and worst of humanity, demanding both humility and courage. Lys, leaning heavily on his cane, smiled faintly, eyes glistening. We have survived the trials of awe, fear, and knowledge. Now we have faced the trial of our hearts, and we have passed. Elara felt tears sting her eyes. Kael squeezed her hand. This is only the beginning, he said. But it's proof. Humanity can rise again, not because of the Titans, but because of what we choose to be. Above them, the three Titans stood in silent vigil, immense and eternal, a testament to the power of the past and the promise of the future. The trial of the heart was complete, and with it came the knowledge that humanity's greatest strength was not in machines or might, but in its courage, unity, and the choices that came from hearts unafraid to rise. And in the valley, a quiet determination settled over humanity, the fire of the forgotten now blazing brightly, ready to forge a future worthy of the legacy they had rediscovered. The first light of morning painted the valley in gold, spilling across the ruins of Kalden and catching the glint of metal on the Titans. They stood tall, majestic, and serene, a presence both humbling and inspiring. The night of trials had passed. Humanity had faced awe, fear, doubt, knowledge, and heart, and they had endured. They had learned that greatness was not inherited nor gifted, it was remembered, rekindled from the courage and resolve that lived within them all along. Elara stood on the ridge once more, her eyes tracing the outlines of the three Titans. The first had been the mirror, showing humanity the heights they could achieve. The second had been the guide, offering knowledge and the fire of creation. The third, the shadowed one, had been the test of heart, reflecting both their weaknesses and their capacity for unity. Each had awakened a piece of what humanity had long forgotten. Kael joined her, silent for a moment, watching the sunrise. Then he spoke, voice low but steady. We've survived the trials, but now it's time to rise, not as survivors but as humans who remember what we were always meant to be. Elara nodded, feeling a warmth deep within her chest. For centuries, humanity had lingered in the ruins, afraid to dream, afraid to build, afraid to trust themselves. The Titans had returned to remind them, to awaken that latent courage. And humanity had answered, not with weapons or greed, but with unity, wisdom, and heart. The villagers emerged from the valley, faces bright with awe and resolve. Children ran freely, laughing, their eyes reflecting the Titans' glow, unburdened by fear. The elders, weary yet proud, lifted their heads higher than they had in decades. Lys leaned heavily on his cane but walked steadily, nodding at the young ones with approval. Humanity in all its forms was alive with possibility. Elara turned back to the Titans, stepping forward. We remember now, she said, voice carrying across the valley. We remember courage. We remember creation. We remember that our destiny is not to hide in ruins, but to rise. The first Titan lowered its massive arm, sweeping the valley in a gesture that felt like acknowledgement. The second extended a hand toward the sky, and light spread outward, bathing the valley and the distant mountains in brilliance. Even the third, jagged and dark, leaned forward slightly, its eyes softening, its judgment replaced by quiet recognition. A hum filled the valley, resonant and deep, vibrating through stone and flesh alike. It was not merely sound, it was affirmation. Humanity had passed the trials. They had proven that they were worthy not because of machines or might, but because of what they had remembered and chosen to embrace within themselves. Kael grasped Elara's hand, eyes bright. This is the beginning, he said. The Titans are no longer only teachers or mirrors. They are partners, and together we can rebuild what was lost, and reach farther than ever before. Elara smiled, feeling tears prick her eyes. The collapse, the years of fear and doubt, the shadows that had haunted their hearts, all of it had led to this moment. Humanity was awake, not as a fragile species clinging to survival, but as a force capable of shaping worlds. guided by wisdom, courage, and unity. From the valley, a cheer rose spontaneously, soft at first, then swelling into a roar that carried across the plains, up the cliffs, and into the mountains. The sound was not only celebration, it was recognition of their own power, a vow that the mistakes of the past would not define the future. Elara looked to the horizon, where the Titan silhouettes glimmered against the sunlit sky. "We will not forget," she whispered. "We will honor what has been given, and we will rise as we were always meant to. Humanity remembers, and humanity will endure." The Titans remained, massive and eternal, yet no longer distant or unknowable. They were witnesses, guides, and allies in a new era. Humanity, standing in awe and determination, had reclaimed their legacy and ignited a spark that could never again be extinguished. And so, in the valley of Kaldan, under the gaze of beings older than time, humanity began to rise, not in fear, not in doubt, but in remembered glory. The forgotten had awakened. The fire of the past burned once more in human hearts, and the future, vast and limitless, awaited. The dawn of remembered glory had come.